It's time for Recipe of the Day. This is the easiest spaghetti casserole out there because you don't have to boil the pasta first. It cooks right in the sauce in the oven, kind of like the no-boil lasagna recipes. You know what I mean? So you don't have to bring a big pot of water up to the boil and then cook the pasta and drain it before starting to make this. I will say that I am going to tell you what to do if you want to cook the spaghetti or if you have leftover cooked spaghetti, but the main recipe is for a no-boil version. And I'll tell you what I really love for this is if I have spaghetti on my meal plan for the week, we're going to have spaghetti on Wednesday, and then it's just a crazy day and I'm feeling a little bit lazier and I don't want to stand in the kitchen for a long time, I prep this up with the uncooked noodles in about 5 minutes and get it into the oven and I walk away. Now, if you're like me, you're wondering if the pasta ends up gummy, and I will tell you it doesn't. It ends up kind of tasting like, you know, when you have leftover spaghetti, like the noodles or the sauce in the fridge overnight, and then the next day the pasta has kind of soaked up some of that sauce and is like even better than it was the first day. That's what you get straight out of the oven here. It's not gummy at all. The noodles just have cooked in the sauce, so they have all that wonderful flavor. So I'm going to say there are 3 main keys to doing this kind of no-boil pasta dish. The first is, like if you've done the no-boil lasagnas before, you do have to make sure that there is extra liquid in there in the pan that you're baking it in so that the noodles can cook in there and soak up that liquid. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you want to cover it really well with aluminum foil, like 2 layers crimped really well all the way around because you want the steam to stay in there and the liquid to stay in there and really cook that pasta. And then the third key is after you take it out of the oven, when it's done, you take the foil off and you leave it uncovered sitting on your counter for 15 minutes. This is so important. I can hear you already when you first take this out of the oven and take the foil off. You're going to be like, Christine, this is a wet mess. Trust me. Leave that foil off. Leave it alone for the 15 minutes. It's still going to be hot because it was crazy hot in there. What happens is the steam rises off and is evaporating away some of that liquid. At the same time, the liquid has stopped bubbling and boiling and is settling down, kind of being sucked in or trapped in by the cheese, sucked in by some of the noodles. And after those 15 minutes, it is not a liquid mess. It is pasta perfection. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to make this recipe now. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you what to do differently if you already have some cooked spaghetti, like you're using leftover spaghetti, or if you feel like standing at the stove, cooking that pot of pasta, you can totally do that too. I've gotcha. Okay, you're going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to get out a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, and you're going to get 8 ounces of uncooked spaghetti, and you're going to hold the strands of spaghetti kind of all bundled together in one hand at one end, the other hand to the other end, and then break it in half so your spaghetti noodles are all halved. And they're just going to be able to move around in there better in the baking dish when they're not as long as the baking dish. You know what I mean? Okay, then put those broken spaghetti noodles into the baking dish, and then you're topping them with 3 cups of cooked meat. That can be cooked ground beef, cooked ground turkey. It could be rotisserie chicken. It could be whatever leftover cooked meat you have. It could be already pre-cooked meat, like some kielbasa or some of those chicken sausages that are sold fully cooked. They're usually Asiago and spinach flavored, that kind of thing. Or you could make this vegetarian and use 2 15-ounce cans of beans that you've drained first. So lots of different options here. You essentially want 3 cups of already cooked or safe to eat protein. Sprinkle that over your uncooked pasta. Then add a 14.5 ounce can of diced tomatoes along with the juice from the can. Just sort of sprinkle that over top, and a 24 ounce jar of tomato sauce. That's going to be 3 cups of tomato sauce. And you're sprinkling a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese over top of that. Now, of course, at this point, I'll just say that you can use a different kind of cheese, and then you might want to change the flavor profile a bit, right? So I'm about to tell you to also add 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning. If you were going to use cheddar cheese, then you might want to do 2 teaspoons of chili powder instead of the Italian seasoning. Or if you were going to do a pepper jack or Monterey Jack, Then maybe you do 2 teaspoons of taco seasoning. Just be careful because some seasoning blends like taco seasoning have salt in them. So then you wouldn't want to put as much salt later in the recipe. But yeah, you could sort of start thinking about how to riff on these different ideas. I'm actually going to link to my one pot pasta recipe. It's kind of like a formula for coming up with different flavor profiles. But yeah, like if you did the taco seasoning one with the pepper jack cheese, then maybe when it comes out of the oven, you top it with some crushed tortilla chips and green onions. You see what I mean? You can go all kinds of directions with this. But we're going to back up and say we're just using the mozzarella cheese. So you sprinkled 1 cup of mozzarella cheese over top. Then you're going to sprinkle 2 teaspoons of Italian seasoning over that, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. You're going to stir that up. Now, of course, those pasta noodles aren't like bendy and you don't really want to break them more. So you're not like stirring like round and round, just kind of more like pushing things around, moving them around a little bit. And then you're going to pour 2 cups of beef stock over top of the whole thing. Give the baking dish a little shake just to kind of like distribute everything a little evenly. The spaghetti is going to stay at the bottom of the baking dish for the most part because it's like the heaviest thing in there and you put everything else on top of it, right? That is totally fine. We want it down low. In fact, at this point, you are going to make sure that all the pasta is fully submerged in liquid, and then you're covering the baking dish with 2 layers of aluminum foil, making sure that it's very well crimped and sealed all the way around the edges of your baking dish. And like I said earlier, that's to keep the steam in there, keep the heat in there. Very important for this. Then that casserole dish or baking dish is going into the oven and baking until the pasta is tender. It's about 50 minutes, 50. And I just want to say, like, it took me a long time to tell you what to do, but literally it takes minutes to put that together. Like, you break the spaghetti into the baking dish, top it with some meat, open a can of diced tomatoes, that goes in, jar of tomato sauce, that goes in, a couple handfuls of shredded cheese, that goes on top, some sprinklings of seasonings, a little beef stock, aluminum foil into the oven. Right? Okay, once that pasta is tender, like I said, like 50 minutes, you take that out and then you sprinkle another cup of mozzarella cheese over top, as well as half a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese, and put that back into the oven just to melt the cheese uncovered for 5 minutes, and then take it out. And this is where we are leaving it uncovered for 15 minutes. And that's when everything's going to settle in and reabsorb and become just the right amount of sauce. Now, I will say after those 15 minutes, if you want to make your casserole look a little bit better, you can put the whole thing under the broiler just to brown the cheese a little bit, just like 2 to 3 minutes. Just watch it carefully because you don't want it to burn. The broiler can be kind of intense, right? And that is it. You put in like 5 minutes of effort, maybe another like 3 later on in and out of the oven, and you have a delicious spaghetti dinner. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is February 3rd of 2025. The other place that you can get this recipe is in our Facebook group. I post the recipe of the day there every single morning, so you can always get inspired for what you can make that day, find out what's on my mind, get to the episode to listen, and get to the link to the recipe. That Facebook group is at facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.